Madam Speaker, we are here this morning to affirm that in America we are a nation of equal citizens. No person is above the law. And by doing that, we honor the acknowledgement of congressional oversight and responsibility. Congress has a responsibility that dates to Magna Carta, and I'd be prepared to go back to the Battle of Hastings, if necessary, in 1066 to make the argument that I've just offered. The Ways and Means Committee is entrusted with the oversight of our revenue system. The Ways and Means Committee and staff members all honor that very profound tradition. But at the root of it all this morning is our federal tax system that funds the democracy that we all love and cherish. We rely on voluntary tax compliance from all Americans, and perhaps especially the President, who always should model the highest order of compliance. On December 13th, 49 years ago this month, President Richard Nixon asked the Ways and Means Committee chairman through letter to have the Joint Committee on Taxation review his tax returns. Let me say something about the Joint Committee on Taxation. Both political parties hold the JCT in the highest personal and professional esteem. This examination established the precedent for congressional oversight of a presidential tax compliance. 4 years ago, our committee began reviewing the mandatory audit of presidential tax returns to see how the IRS was handling the stress of a president with complex finances. The committee expected to find that mandatory examinations were conducted promptly and that more staff had been dedicated to the program to meet the more rigorous demands. I would remind all that this morning's New York Times and last evening that I read online highlights the fact that Barack Obama and Joe Biden both had their tax forms reviewed. Instead, after years of stonewalling and litigation that ended at the Supreme Court, 4 federal court decisions from 3 courts, our committee found that for all practical purposes, the mandatory audit program was dormant. It wasn't just functioning poorly, it wasn't functioning at all. In fact, the IRS did not even start its mandatory audits until receiving a letter that I sent requesting a president's tax forms. The IRS has failed to administer its own mandatory audit program policies, so the best available recourse is for Congress to fill this void with the legislation that eliminates the IRS's discretion in the matter. That is precisely what we are asking of this institution this morning. I can't imagine that anybody, given the controversy of recent days, would be opposed to this legislation. We would require the IRS to publish the President's tax returns, audit them in a timely manner, and keep the American public updated on the results. Because the President is not an ordinary taxpayer. A reminder, our legislation is about the presidency, not about a president. No other American holds this power or influence as the leader of our executive branch. We arrived at this legislation through a deliberate and cautious process, as always. As always. These improved guardrails will provide Americans the assurance they deserve that our tax code applies evenly and fairly to all of us, no matter how powerful. The Ways and Means Committee oversight staff pursued the facts about mandatory examination procedures with professionalism and diligence. They did a great job. I emphasize that there were no leaks by the committee leading up to this decision to release our report on the mandatory examination process. Imagine that in Washington for something this complex. No leaks. We adhered carefully and scrupulously to the law and resisted entreaties from the fringe of both political parties as we proceeded with great patience and deliberation. No leaks as to how we were to move forward. This bill, combined with investments in the IRS that we made as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, will preserve the integrity of the executive and our system of tax and ensure that no one in the country is above the law. Today's legislation, I repeat, is not about a president. It is about the presidency. It is not about being punitive or malicious, and for those on the other side and those who are witness here today, they've worked with me for a long time, and they know what I just said is entirely accurate. The bill we consider today, once again, is about the integrity of the presidency and the integrity of our tax system. Madam Speaker, finally, I ask unanimous consent to include in the record a technical explanation of the bill prepared by the staff on the Joint Committee on Taxation, and I urge our colleagues to pass this legislation, and for the moment, I reserve the balance of my time.
Without objection, the gentleman from Massachusetts reserves.